This is Star Wars Outlaws. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the apparently first open world Star Wars game outside of Galaxies where you dive into the shoes of Kay Vess, who is basically a Han Solo type character who keeps kind of accidentally throwing herself into worse and worse situations and eventually is attempting to build a crew in order to do a crazy heist. I'm calling her Femme Solo, although I do think there is a lot more behind this character, a lot more kind of heart and really distinct elements to her individual as she kind of makes a bit of an awkward name for herself in the galaxy. And she's joined by Nyx, her faithful little companion that's like a dog, an adorable little thing that helps you out and allows you to basically do a lot of the dangerous tasks that you are going to be doing, as you are somehow the greatest infiltrator spy type character in the existence of the Star Wars galaxy. It's actually kind of ridiculous, some of the things she does in this game, and it's really hard to believe that she's not a Jedi, even though you are doing a lot of the things that you do in other modern Star Wars games, where you are basically like climbing things, doing parkour. She's got a bit more of a blaster kind of style going on. I mean, I'm dressed as Lando basically, which is kind of funny. But yeah, you are basically at all purposes kind of going around doing the basic modern Star Wars kind of like movement things. You just don't have a lightsaber, which is an interesting choice to go with for this particular game, and it works out. Like, you actually spend a lot of this game, as odd as it may sound, literally just moving through pipes, vents, and other places as you attempt to make a mark in the galaxy, survive, and get the job done. Actually quite a lot going on in this one. It's a rather interesting and pretty lengthy, narrative-focused experience where you are attempting to make your mark on the galaxy, which is intriguing. So let's talk a bit about what this game has to offer on the Series S. So unlike the Series X, you're kind of getting really basic gameplay kind of options in terms of visuals, whereas the Series X offers 3 different graphical modes. The Series S only has the one here, which is using FSR as expected, 30 FPS, and it looks like it's dynamic 1080p-ish depending on the scenario, where it goes either quite a bit up, quite a bit down, depending on what's happening, and some of the planets are a lot more demanding than other planets, and yeah, your mileage is really going to vary based on the type of situation you're in and the planet that you are kind of exploring along the way. It's a interesting visual set, and I do wish they would have taken things a little bit further for the Series S, but it makes total sense to me that the Series S kind of is how it is. And yeah, let's just quickly dive in and take a look at that. There's a photo mode too. There's also HDR support. So yeah, displaying graphics, no graphic options like you would have on the Series X. You do have the option though to move it from 21:9 to fill screen, which looks really weird. You can turn off film grain, you can change the motion blur density. But yeah, essentially they've kind of done, at least in my opinion, they're doing a trick that we saw with like Hellblade, or basically 360 era stuff used to do in order to keep the performance level up. You would cut off parts of the screen in order to make less of a picture quality that you are actually outputting. That's the idea, so less of a resolution. And then if you do the full screen, it looks really awkwardly squished, and it just doesn't really quite look right. I don't know if it does to you, I don't know how it looks on YouTube to you, but this just looks really unnatural. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, when I first started the game, I kept sitting there being like, man, I really wish we could have a full screen game. And then I tried their full screen sort of option, fill screen option, and it just looks weird. And I don't know, I'm assuming that there's going to be a future Xbox kind of console down the road that will allow us to you know, have a full screen option or maybe a next gen version of the game or something like that down the road, that will help out, because it is, you know, it's a little rough having to basically deal with that element of the game where it's kind of like you don't see the full picture. And like the Series S does seem to have some performance type issues and stuff too, and yeah, I mean, like, it's not too bad. Like, it's decently clean enough, it's the full game, but you know, it's the Series S kind of being the Series S, right? So let's dive in and let's talk more about the characters. So Kay Vess, as I've mentioned, is someone that is building a team. You stumble into these circumstances where you are essentially having to create a squad with a bunch of different people that have been picked out for you. You have a weird fascination with your robot pal, which I find kind of could have used a little bit more work. And you go on these adventures in order to put together a team. You have a couple open world type planets that you get to visit. We were just on Tatooine. We're kind of going to like the main planet, which acts as a bit of a tutorial and your main portion of the actual experience. And yes, you can fly around out in space. They essentially took the components of, I guess you would say, I think it's Starlink, and they turned them into kind of an open space world type area where you can do little space battles and collect resources and items and stuff like that. And very much your open world Ubisoft type of game in terms of like random events that you can dive into and little activities and stuff like that. The strengths of this game do lie within its single player kind of setup, linear areas. I actually found that like some of the weaker parts of this game actually had to do with the open world, and I liked it a lot more when you were actually doing story stuff, because basically like the open world, you'd be like pushed from like, hey, here's one place, go to the other side of the map, and then go to another part of the map. I don't even know if I mentioned that in my Series X review, but that was a big part of it too. I could talk about this game for a long time, because it's just, there is quite a lot to it. Like, it's decently long. It is polished enough. There are some bugs. There are some like things that don't properly work, but then you just like reset a checkpoint or something and you're good to go, or reset a level. Some funnier bugs, but for the most part it was pretty smooth in terms of playing through it. It does offer it, like I said, a decently lengthy story, and then you can go beyond that and take it in the open world and blast stormtroopers, find hidden stuff, do side missions. It's neat because you can kind of go into these cities and you can talk to people, and these different people might have like quests for you, or you might get like a different random mission that you can dive into. Like, there's actually a fair bit that can happen within the world if you leave if you leave the confinements of doing the main narrative. And I think that's a little different too, because it would have been cooler for me to have spent more time going out and about, because I was sort of so focused on getting the story done in a timely manner, because it would have been neat to go and, you know, explore more of the world of Star Wars Outlaws. So another big part of the game is when you're working through the story, you're actually able to interact with a variety of factions. So there's, first off, there's your characters, right? Your core character, Kay Vess with Nyx. And then moving past that, you can interact with characters such as these different factions. So I wanted to align myself with like Crimson Dawn. And there's a few different factions here. So we got like the Pikes, we got the Dawn, the Cartel, the Ishiga clan. So there's different factions. And then your reputation goes up and down based on how you kind of do things and interact with these factions. So I would be like, oh, well, I'm really into Crimson Dawn. But then, like, as I would be working up a reputation for them, I'd go and do a main story mode, which would then force me to basically be in bad terms with them. And I'd be like, well, what is the point of that? Where, you know, essentially, you're, like, forced to anger them in different ways. And I think the faction thing almost makes more sense when you, like, finish the game and do secondary stuff, like, afterwards, like, where I'm at. And definitely performance issues on Series S for sure. and it's just kind of like, it's a little weird, right? That you are kind of like pigeonholed into doing certain stuff. Where I was kind of like, the faction system's really neat, but like, it doesn't really do much if you basically are forced to cause problems. Because it's cool, like if you're pals with the Red Dawn, you can go into their base kind of unnoticed and like do whatever you kind of want, really within reason. Unless they catch you like stealing or something, and then they might get mad at you, and then you're not buddy-buddy or whatever. But that in itself is also never really too explored gameplay-wise. Yeah, I don't know. It's quite strange how that kind of works out, because you're wanting that faction system to be a little bit more dynamic so that you can do crazier things, and I don't know if it ever really feels like it's fully like realized. Holy performance dipping in the Series S version of this game for sure. Woo! Don't drive your speeder off a cliff. The speeder also has some issues where it's like you tend to bump into a lot of things and like bail out and almost die and stuff, and it can be a little annoying. Yeah, for me though, like it was kind of neat visiting a different part of Star Wars, but at the same time, so much of it was, oh, this isn't where I wanted to go. So much of it literally was also Star Wars that like we're so familiar with, and we've like seen so many times and done so many stuff with, and yeah, I don't know. Like it both wanted to escape the confinements of Star Wars, but also nestle itself really tightly in there. You know, it was kind of nice that we had a protagonist where she literally did not really care specifically about different factions. Like she herself wanted to be free. Rebels, who cares about the rebels? You know, everybody's in it for themselves, and it still kind of worked along the way where everything kind of went back to those sort of tropes, and that in itself was a little disappointing because I was really hoping they would break out of that a lot more, and it just kind of led back to it. It didn't fully embrace it, but it did kind of, you know, in a roundabout kind of way go back to that sort of thing. So that was a big part of the story element of it. Still a nice balance of like some stuff you can do in space, some stuff you can do on the different planets, a few different planets you get to visit. The element of doing like a heist kind of thing. I wish some characters had a bit more time spent with them so we would get to know them more and kind of care about their individual more, so that we like had a stronger faction thing. It was weird pacing wise, like it was really, really slow. Like this area here, this world's like basically the tutorial world. You spend a lot of time here. And then like, you know, you go to a different place and it's kind of really quick there, and then, you know, the ending seemed like it really went on for quite a bit, and yeah, it's kind of strange, the variables in this game in terms of like where you go and what you see and the things you do. It's like it's pacing, and the game itself is like pretty okay. Like it's a solid game. I both enjoyed it. There were some parts of it that felt like they dragged a bit. And weirdly, the difficulty like scaled up quite a bit towards the end of it for sure, which was a bit strange. Like the ending stuff, there was like weird difficulty spikes, and I don't know. Like it's kind of it's okay. It's solid, but I definitely kind of wanted more from it. Like, I really did feel at times like I was sort of going through the motions playing it, where I'm kind of like just going in and blasting stuff and not thinking too much about it. And yeah, I don't know, it's an okay Star Wars game. It about hit my expectations for it, which is fine. But, like, it would have been cool had it kind of exceeded expectations or done something a little crazier gameplay-wise that kind of went a little bit out of the path of things we've seen in the past and kind of surprised me more. That was the biggest thing. Now, the Series S version, obviously you've been seeing some performance like tanking in that. It's not the worst of situations, and honestly, if you're used to playing on the Series S, you are going to be totally fine with this. Like, it looks okay, it's clear enough. It would have been nice to have other performance modes, but you know, nowadays, obviously the Series S is a lot more of an afterthought in certain situations, so I kind of get it for sure. Yeah, I don't know. This one is interesting, because, like, it is kind of weird, right? Like, you are somehow just like the greatest, not detective, but you're like this great spy stealth person. And the stealth was kind of hit or miss too, honestly. Like some of the stealth stuff, like it was weird how they would just know where you are, and then other times they wouldn't like know at all where you are. And that was a bit strange too, and there's a lot of stealth stuff in this game, like a lot of stealth segments, and yeah, it's kind of strange, because like open world I'd be like, where am I going? Because the speeder bike was a little hard to understand where I was like kind of riding on it, and you do a fair bit of that. It was basically like anytime I was in the open world it felt like an inconvenience. Whereas the regular story missions, I was kind of moving through them and being like, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? Solving some light puzzles, nothing too intense. And you can scale your difficulty and settings and everything too in the game. They give you lots of different options for fine-tuning the Star Wars Outlaws experience to be kind of what you need it to be, which is nice. And, you know, that's accessibility options and all that, which are expected these days, especially from Ubisoft and big companies, big publishers. I just kind of wish it would have went a little bit more, I don't know if dark is kind of the phrasing, because Star Wars stuff is always like lighthearted and fun in that, but I would have liked maybe a bit more of a mature element to it, because it really feels like at times you're just kind of like randomly popping up with like new characters suddenly, and then you're just like accepting that they're there, and I don't know, some of it felt a little silly. Wow, did that speeder almost just like blow by me and just, why, what? Like I said, the speeder, it's got like a mind of its own, honestly. Like sometimes it's really good, and sometimes it's just like, really just gets you kind of killed awkwardly and stuff like that. Hut territory. Oh no, I've got a bad setup with the huts. That's not good. But at least it'll give you some action. And regular gameplay is a lot more action-packed when you're actually moving through the story doing stuff instead of, look at the Gamorrean guards over here. Oh wow. Oh yeah, no, I remember the Gamorrean guards being here. They were annoying. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I was just kind of expecting a little bit more of a surprise from it, just because it felt so kind of tame to a degree, if that makes any level of sense. Like, I was kind of expecting a little bit of a darker, oh, we're a heist team kind of thing, and it's like they wanted to do that, and they kind of never fully embraced doing that, and yeah, it's got both moments that I think are, oh no, fun and exciting, and then other parts where you're just kind of like, I don't know about this, and it kind of creates a bit of an uneven sort of thing, where I both liked it, but it was kind of like middling, and it was okay. But it, like, if it had been a little more finely tuned, I think there was like a lot more that they could have got out of this game. Like, it could have done, like, it could have provided a lot more than it did. Oh, this looks just like FSR soup. Water is always the biggest tell for like AMD's technology. Yeah, like if you had a really, like, the Series X version of this game looks okay. And if you had like a really good PC, I think this game would be just straight beautiful. And you can tell they're doing their absolute best to kind of make this like run and be like semi-smooth for Series S, but you can tell this poor console's just like absolutely buckling under the weight of trying to run this kind of modern game, and that in itself is sort of fascinating for sure. I think Star Wars Outlaws, some will find it kind of intriguing. If you're looking for some kind of like mind-blowing next kind of Star Wars game, I don't fully know if this one is going to be that kind of thing for you, but I could definitely see how some folks would really find this to be an intriguing little adventure. And, you know, I like the story, I kind of like the characters. Yeah, I don't know, this one's really, really intriguing to me, because there's a lot of like little things that kind of add up where I'm like, I wish this was handled better or that was handled better, but I'm still like also like, oh, it's a game, you know, you're here to have fun and play and blast things and enjoy Star Wars. But yeah, I don't know, gameplay wise, they kind of play safe for mechanics and stuff like that. You don't really break from the mold too much, and it's sort of, it's okay is what it is. It's a solid Star Wars experience, but kind of really lifted by a good main character, I would say. Other than that, So-so for Star Wars Outlaws.